Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, September 17th. Starting a little bit later than I wanted to. Honestly, I'm not even really upset with myself as much that I'm starting maybe an hour or two later than I could have. I'm upset with myself as more that I just don't think I've gotten any recording done at all in the past 2 days. I'm trying to learn Cody, and that kept me busy. I was taking a sample of MP3s, and apparently, since Tiny Media Manager doesn't really work with MP3s, and so a software like Music Bee has to then be used as an idea. Oh man, I forgot to do the private thing challenge too. Probably for 2 days. It doesn't really matter. Like Tiny Media Manager is literally 3 buttons. There's an update database button, there's a search and scrape button, there's an edit button, and then there's a rename and organize your files button. And you don't even really need to use the edit button most of the time. And sure, there's a ton of features and options you can set, which are nice, but in the actual process, it's just like boom, and then select after you've updated the database which of the video files you have, and then search and scrape, and then rename, then select the next one, and so on and so on. Very quick process for something that is going to give you a lot of metadata. And the metadata, I think, specifically for videos, is way less likely to be randomly wrong. I see EU's on the chat saying hi. Like, where, like, the only thing you're gonna really struggle to get metadata so far, as far as I've found with Tiny Media Manager, is fan edits, fair use recuts of movies, things that are just extremely rare, extremely old. Not any movie with any kind of real fandom at all is probably going to get the metadata. MP3 FLAC files, music files in general, I need to pick what I'm going to play. I guess Bloodcraft if I have an option, otherwise it doesn't matter. Have a lot more variety. Like there's a lot of different ways that a MP3 could be a cover or a different version of a song, and that might or might not really affect the metadata as you try to add it to MP3 files. Plus, you're not really getting as much informative use with metadata in MP3 files until you really go deep down the rabbit hole with trying to get, say, synchronized lyrics or just text lyrics or both, trying to get as many embedded images as you can with like the front of a CD jewel case, the back, the inserts, the actual picture of the CD, things like that certainly are where you could add a bit of information, but also it's kind of pointless information. I've stopped caring about what cards I'm picking at this point, so I'm just clicking random things. And so the workflow, as I'm trying to optimize here for time, and this is always the problem with the idea of optimization, is you might spend way more time trying to optimize something than the time you'll save by optimizing something. But the workflow for MP3s was a lot more frustrating than movies. I'm still... the workflow to get it to really nicely set up for Cody for movies is use Tiny Media Manager, use that dead simple process, then use MP3 tag editor, I think, is the MP4 tag editor. It is the software. There's several different versions of basically the same software, and that's just something that lets me take the information from the .info files that Tiny Media Manager has and effectively replicate them, that same information, as embedded metadata. Actually, it's not even working that way. I'm literally going to one website to get some of the information, going to a different website that probably has almost always almost always the same information. So it's just like, well, go from one site to get one thing, go from another site to get the other, just because those are the default things as far as the options. And of course, it's way easier to embed metadata into one 2-hour movie than it is to embed 2 hours worth of MP3's metadata. But the workflow for MP3s is right now to use MusicBeat to identify and try and embed data, and then use MP3 tag to make playlists. I've spent probably the past 2 days trying to learn batch files, and there's definitely a rant I could have about just how awful Windows batch files are. I'm going to answer EU's question here in a second. I do see it on the chat. But yeah, Windows batch files are just terrible. That they have not added functionality or anything. I think they literally are just still around and being supported by Windows for backwards compatibility reasons. But yeah, it is a terrible scripting language compared to using Bash or Ash or any other scripted .sh style batch file that you would use in Linux. I imagine the true solution there is you're supposed to just learn Windows PowerShell at this point and use PowerShell scripts. But I've already spent so much time trying to get this batch file to work, to run a command line MP3 metadata extractor so it can make recursive playlists. Ideally, what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to look at a folder and say, okay, in this folder is a bunch of albums. This is the folder for this collection, whether that collection is based on an artist or just compilations or whatever. So it looks at the name of the folder that it's in, and it's going to make a playlist for all the sub-albums in the subfolders. And it's going to make individual playlists in each of the subfolders that just has the music in that specific folder. So that should be really nice and optimized. The only thing you aren't doing is perhaps going up a third tier where you would try and make a playlist that just kind of had all music that's not being split between a compilation or a collection. And frankly, at that point, you're just putting it on random shuffle, or you're creating just an incredibly large and long playlist that's out of the scale of what most people would want. So yeah, I've been programming this script, which ideally would have only taken a few hours, but Windows is just making it incredibly difficult, mostly because of the fact that there's the old style of how files and folders were supposed to be, where everything was supposed to be 8.3. There were supposed to be 3 characters for the file extension, like .exe, not 4 characters like .flac, then a period in front of that, and then up to 8 characters in front of that. And that's a short file name. That's what originally DOS had. And then even in the first few years of that system, and DOS working on that system, it was fairly obvious that was a terrible limitation. Honestly, file extensions in general is just a terrible idea because it never really helped much. Like, because almost, I would say, half of your files on any computer are going to be executables in the old days. .exes or .bat files or .com files. They don't even make .com files anymore, really. And then the rest of them are just going to be like very recognizable and very obvious .text files or .mp3 files. There's probably less than 50 extensions that are used more than a dozen times on a hard drive even today. And they don't really mean anything from that. I don't know if I have anything else to say there other than, yeah, I went down the rabbit hole and distracted myself with programming instead of playing Binding of Isaac, which is what I should have done. Should have gotten at least one recording there. Maybe I did and I've just slept. Like, my sleep schedule still is also crazy where I'm waking up and then going back to sleep. Yeah, I genuinely think I may have picked up some bug or something that's just made me incredibly tired. To get to EUs, he says in the chat, and nothing to say today, so random question. What is the origin of your name and your logo? By name I mean Rydo. And then he says sorry for the bad grammar, which the grammar is fine for me. I'm not really concerned about bad grammar as long as I can read that. And then he says later on, if there is bad grammar. Like, Americans, I would say, generally speaking, Americans don't appreciate apologies, United Statesians. So, in communicating with them, I would suggest not apologizing for bad grammar, because that hyper focuses them to look for bad grammar. Anyways, I know in most societies, and more polite societies than United States societies, it is very appropriate to apologize for bad grammar, particularly if you're speaking a language you're very rough on. But no, there's plenty of people in the United States that are, for lack of a better term, slack-jawed idiots and barely speak English themselves. So we are, as United Statesians, I would say, very used to people using bad grammar. In fact, there's a decent chance that an average foreigner speaking English speaks better than an average American speaking English in a lot of places. As for my name, Rydo, I was playing Heroes of Might and Magic 3 many decades ago, and I was playing with a friend, and I randomly smashed my fingers on the keyboard, and Rydo came out. I believe there were some symbols at the end of it, but I've long since dropped the symbols because of that really not working. And it was something I just joked with my friend with and made a big deal of it, and then I just kept it and just used it for playing video games after it. It's honestly something I would suggest a lot of people do. There's far too many there's far too many people that have gamer tags, gamer handles that are just something they thought about when they were 12 years old and 14 years old. And they and they just keep it. So a lot of times it's just like cool dude 69. If you happen to be a particularly edgy teenager when you kept their name, or they have something that it's just not very creative or anything. There's never been a time where I thought somebody has made like a really smart literary reference as their gamer tag, or thought of anything really creative. Like it all is centered around the idea that most people make their gamer tags when they're very young, and then they stick with it and they just never change it. So yeah, I'm glad that I picked a random occurrence. It means absolutely nothing. It does have a vague Asian sound to it, but I didn't have a particular fascination with Japan or anime or anything back then. Didn't probably even know what anime was at the time. It was just randomly running my hand across the keyboard. As for the logo, I briefly tried to make a logo and channel art, and I had someone make me something that I fairly quickly was tired of and didn't feel like it looked particularly good. You're definitely in a weird position as a YouTuber who's not making any money to try and ask somebody to work for free for you, even though you're working for free. It's slightly different to work for yourself for free than to ask somebody else to do it. So yeah, I can't really complain that the original logo was rough. And so what I did is I took that original logo and I ran it through a program that is fairly nice. Let me see if I can see it. I think I still have the program on my cell phone. It was a cell phone program that had come out that takes an image and then runs a artificial intelligence filter over it, kind of like how you would see putting the puppy dog faces on live video nowadays. There's a program that does that. Is it Snapseed? No, that's a different one. I may have uninstalled it. And originally the software had a whole bunch of filters for free, and then they kind of took some back and tried to charge people for the filters. But yeah, I ran it through that program, the original logo, and it spit out a lot of different variations. And the variation I like the most is my current logo, many years old. My original logo was black and dark, going for more of a dark theme. I don't feel like that fully filled in the style of content I was making. A lot of thought really hasn't been put into my logo. And yeah, as soon as I was consistently making money, I definitely plan to hire an artist to just do a full refresh and a much more consistent, better artist thing. Of course, having a new logo and a full refresh on logos would also just be the first step to having custom thumbnails, which theoretically would make a lot of my videos perhaps a lot more clickable, a lot more clickbaity. But I mean, you kind of have to make videos and thumbnails clickbaity to succeed on YouTube. It's a terrible system they've created. But yeah, in the process of making this stained glass logo, which is unique and stands out, and it's better than just having nothing, I also created the Cool, Calm, Collected subtitle, which I think is about the best description of, or about the most positive way I could describe what often is somewhat dull and drony and just kind of low energy content. Like, I definitely took the phrase cool, calm, collected as a direct swipe at, hey, this is not going to be a high energy Captain Sparkles style YouTube channel where you're just always hyping things up and always making it seem like everything is super important, and that that this is the most energetic and interesting content that you're ever gonna see. So yeah, cool as in I don't usually lose my cool, although I've rage quit a few times. Calm as in I'm not going to be hyper, and I'm going to be pretty calm. How much of that is really a choice is debatable, because a lot of that is also just I don't think I'm probably healthy enough to be energetic with just being tired and insomnia and all. And critical, I think, was the it was another byline. I don't think I collected was one of them. I think it's cool, critical, calm, critical, something like that. I don't even know. I'd have to bring up my own YouTube channel. Yeah, I think my logo is better than my trailer. I think my trailer, I spent a lot of time on that as I spent like a week trying to make that trailer, and it's fine, but it is almost immediately got dated for the games it was showing and for the concept behind it. It could have used a lot more polish and a lot more effort if I could hire an editor, a video editor, to do that for me. But my channel has always been centered around the idea of I don't want to make thumbnails. I don't want to be a video editor. I want to play video games and talk about video games. And this is one of those cases where the creative artist here is, as me, wants to do the thing he's good at or he wants to do, and that's where you hire out for other people to do the other work, the boring work. And since those other people are employees, they don't particularly have to be passionate about it. It'd be nice if they were, but they just need to be good at it. So yeah, that you pretty much just have to make something, and I probably should have put a lot more thought and a lot more effort into a logo and just a general concept of what my YouTube channel was going to be before I made a YouTube channel. But honestly, it's not terrible to just hop in there as quickly as possible and start making content, because you really want to get past that first 6 months of making content anyways, because if you're not going to be in it for the long haul, you're not going to succeed. And honestly, it's not even really the first 6 months. It's closer to probably the first 3 years. If you can't commit to 3 years, you're going to be a lot like a lot of other YouTubers who give up because they don't have even 1,000 subscribers after 3 years, and they're not getting any views at all still after 3 years. But even the big channels on YouTube that have tried to be YouTube channels, like Geek and Sundry is a kind of great example of that. It was basically after the first 3 years that they completely changed who was working there, completely changed what the content was, and went in a completely different direction. And that was with a company that was funding them. So you really have to, if you want to be a YouTuber, and I don't think I can suggest too many people should be YouTubers, you really have to do it for the love of your content and your art, and be a starving artist, or at least assume that's what's going to be, because success is extremely rare and extremely fleeting. I don't even think PewDiePie, in his first 6 years even, really thought he was gonna become successful. To continue on the chat, EU says, okay, I'll stop apologizing for grammar. Thank you for the advice. Then he says, the history of my profile picture is similar to the history of your name because it's a stupid photo that I made one day, and then I realized it was a good photo for my profile. Yep. And yeah, being proud of something you made and showing it off is probably one of the best reasons of all, well, that went badly, to choose one thing, one image versus another. Because if it makes you happy, is really just like the best reason to pick a picture. They say on YouTube, to just wrap up,
like the moon on the water's surface.
Did I read the EU's last one? Let's just read it again, in case I just read that in my head. The history of my profile picture is similar to the history of your name, because it was a stupid photo that I made one day, and I realized it was a good photo for my profile. Yeah, we did read that. They say 90% of all successful videos on YouTube, which what determines a successful video, have custom thumbnails. I definitely suspect I would have a significantly higher number of subscribers and views if I had custom thumbnails. But there is a certain level to it also. Like, if I went to, if I tried to make thumbnails, I almost certainly would end up making something that is in MS Paint and looks awful and would take me at least 20 minutes per thumbnail. Even if I could get the process down really optimized and get it down to 10 minutes, I'm already upset that I spend somewhere around 4 to 7 minutes scheduling videos. Adding another 10 minutes even to that is just more time taken away from making content. And it's just not something you want to do. And you would think making screenshots from video games would be a good start. And it is in part a good start to making a good thumbnail, but it's really not a great start. Like, there's never really a point in a game that is as polished and as interesting as it should be to make a thumbnail. That's why even the logo screens in most games are composited images of several different characters or several different events, and they are much more busy. They have a lot more going on. There's almost never heads-up interfaces, so ideally, if I was going to try and make a Shadowverse image, I'd probably want to take like a screenshot of just this top part of the characters and this character, and then try and get as many of these characters together on screen and zoom them in. You would want to be able to turn off the heads-up display and get a clean image of the background if you're going to use this background. This isn't even particularly a good one. And that just all requires either creating all new content from scratch or having access to the internal game files, which there's a possibility you could hack the internal game files and get these. Maybe these are live 2D images. They probably are. But then also you run into major copyright issues there where you want to to steer as clear away from copyright infringement and be fair use, you would want to use as much varied material from as many different sources, or you would just ideally want to make something brand new from scratch. And see, the problem with that also runs into, if there was, say, a young inspiring artist that was just hand drawing images all the time, and they were churning out from 0 to completed images like 5 to 20 pages a day, which is pretty much a pretty high amount for like keyframe work for a new starting artist. That would be ideally the kind of artist that I would want to hire, is somebody that could just hand draw something in an art style that made it stand out and look unique. But also, most thumbnails that succeed aren't showing any kind of created art. It's usually people, human faces, more than anything. And so, like, it then goes down to the realm of a face cam. I don't want to do face cam ever. There's nothing to see from a face cam for me, and I think it's just dumb. But yeah, so I don't know really what I would want to do. That's why my logo is so abstract, and it is just the letter R, or my name. There's different versions for different sizes, but like, it is more of an abstract concept. This is a voice that you hear. This isn't a face or a body or a person as much as a persona. You hear the voice, so I can show the actual content of the game better. And inherently, I'm gonna start getting to really rambly mode here in a second if I'm not careful. But inherently, a lot of the successful YouTubers who at one time you would have called video game YouTubers were never really video game critics or video game YouTubers by any real mean, because they were all really personality people. That's how they succeeded, and that's how they grew big. PewDiePie is totally known for being the personality of PewDiePie in his videos nowadays, more than he is actually being a video gamer or covering any kind of content at all. In fact, they've all, now that these successful YouTubers have sold themselves on their own personalities, they've all devolved into doing some fairly boring, repetitive content where they're just going to their own special Reddit because they're so popular. They get a Reddit and they're just looking at content, or they're just talking about news. And in all fairness, these live streams is also fairly boring, repetitive content of covering video game news. But I do try to make it more of a journalistic thing than just talking about news to chit chat. But yeah, only a few people really got popular for playing a specific game, and it had to be that one specific game. So there are definitely Minecraft players who are only famous and successful for playing Minecraft. There are a few. Disguised Toast was popular for playing Hearthstone, and then as soon as he stopped playing Hearthstone, his popularity pretty much disappeared. I haven't seen anything that Disguised Toast has done. Captain Sparkles is totally known for playing Minecraft. Whereas if you look at like Game Grumps, Game Grumps is one of the examples of a company, a group of people playing different games, but they are definitely selling themselves more on being comedians and just playing silly games as a base for comedy. The Completionist played a bunch of games, but he also sold himself as a comedian and just being comedic. A lot of YouTubers definitely give off the feel of just being failed stand-up comedians. Which is kind of ironic because I imagine most comedians barely play video games at all.
Balance. And I guess I'll put some backbone into it.
So, yeah. I like my art as it is. That's why I haven't ever felt the twinge to change it. But also, if somebody told me, hey, I could either donate to her Patreon $5 a month, or I could make thumbnails for you, I would totally say, hey, make thumbnails. Though I will get way more value out of that. There is also a problem, though, in that I've seen plenty of YouTubers who have had artists make thumbnails and things like that, and then they just get upset when the situation changes, when the artist making the thumbnails feels like the YouTube channel has gotten big and should be paying them more, or they just get mad at them for some reason, or frankly they probably just get tired and burned out. And then there's a lot of weirdness there where you have an artist creating art that they might be not wanting to be associated with your channel anymore, and they may try the shenanigans like copyright claims. So you kind of need a fairly ironclad contractors agreement, contract type description with a thumbnail creator, and you need somebody that really would just be a saint, just somebody who loves to work. And as a YouTuber, if I gained more success, I could definitely shout out the artists, and most YouTubers try to do that. Maybe they should do a lot more about that as far as shouting out their video editors and their thumbnail artist creators. A video editor certainly would be another thing that, if my YouTube channel ever was successful, I could see that getting fixed. There is also definitely an argument to making a second channel and just putting the live streams on that second channel separately. But there's no reason to spend the effort to do that when you barely have 500 subscribers in the first place. I don't even know if I have that many. But yeah. YouTube's algorithm is basically the creator of all agony as far as YouTube goes. So yeah. EU says, thanks for answering my questions, by the way. You're welcome. I should probably move on because I will just ramble about it. Like, ideally, and this is something I think I did suggest to YouTube a long time ago, ideally you would be able to create just alpha channeled images, PNG files probably. And what an alpha channel is means you can establish how much of that pixel is visible. So you can set it to like 0% and it is totally clear, or you can set it up to like 255 value. It's not really a percentage. You can set it up to 100% stick with percentages. And then at 100%, it's 100% solid, obtuse. And what you could do then is have a default image that would, say, put a little bit of an overlay on whatever random image the YouTube algorithm decides to use for a screenshot. You can put like a little bit of logo that is on top of that, and that would give some solid personality to the automatically selected images, while not actually making someone create a completely custom image. There was a YouTube video a while ago that really highlighted how nefarious YouTube is. It pretends like you're just doing it for your own interest, and that you're not really an employee or a contractor for YouTube, and that it's not really a job. You can just goof around with YouTube and you'll succeed. But then every single piece of feedback and suggestions they have, while they pretend like, oh, you can take a break, you can take 6 months off, and that's why a lot of YouTubers were complaining about that a few years ago, is that they just never felt like they could take a break for fear of their YouTube channel disappearing. And even now, you really can't take a break for fear of your YouTube channel disappearing. And they've added nothing to alleviate that problem. But every single piece of suggestion and advice that YouTube gives to creators is wrapped in this idea of, they say out of one side of their mouth that you can take a break and you can work as little as much as you want. But in reality, they've created an algorithm here that will completely punish and destroy your channel if you're not putting out at least one good video every single day, and you're not just struggling. And most YouTube videos, it is like they're recording 4 to 8 hours of footage, and then they're editing that down to get to 15-20 minutes of good content. It is just unattainable whatsoever. And there's just no real support there. The algorithm does not help people. It actively tries to push people away from small YouTubers channels into bigger YouTubers channels. It actively tries to influence people so that they watch the videos YouTube wants to promote. And they are acting with impunity in a lot of ways while doing some fairly nefarious stuff. Yeah. And the way YouTube acts would not be acceptable if you were going into an office and working a regular job. Imagine there was an office you went into and you were told you don't really work for them, so they don't have to really pay you, but they will pay you if you have 100 subscribers. But then when you get to 100 subscribers, after that long hard journey, they tell you, oh no, actually we're not going to pay you unless you get 1,000 subscribers, so tenfold more difficult. And then they also say, oh, and we're also going to discount a lot of your views and discount all of your views, so we won't pay you as much if we don't like this footage that you're making, even though you don't work for us and even though it's popular and getting views. It's like that's not something that would be acceptable in the real world. Going to an office, you would have grounds for just straight up slavery claims. We have someone on the chat called www says, yo, hi www, responds EU, and then www says, do you understand English? I yes. I'm trying to think of any scenario in which I don't understand English. I understand English in billiards. I understand English in American United Statesian speak. I understand English in British Queen's English. So unless there's some other English I don't understand and have never heard of, I do think I understand it. Now, I should be able to answer that question a lot easier, but I guess I'm in a whimsical mood. Alright, let's move forward. We had games left over from Wednesday because we were going long, and it's already been 45 minutes of me kind of just rambling. I guess if WWW has something to say later in the chat, I'll respond to that. You know, it would be interesting if there was a speech-to-text feature in the chat. I don't think there is. Like, let me click here and just make sure there isn't something like that. No, I can create a poll. I can use custom emojis. What do the custom emojis even look like? Yeah, they're just the standard 200 emojis. Yeah, EU says, yeah, I know how to read and write and I understand English, but I don't know how to talk in English. Yeah, if there was a speech to text, not text to speech is fairly common these days. If there was a speech to text button that could be triggered, and there probably is a program like that, maybe something like Dragon Naturally Speaking. That's a very old version of speech to text software, and frankly it's probably still one of the best ones out there. If there was a way I could press a button on my keyboard and then speak while speaking to the microphone, and then the phrase I'm saying in the microphone would be specifically sent to the chat, then that would be cool, because there's always been this little disconnect where I have to tell everybody in the chat and pin the initial thing to say, hey, I'll respond to you verbally in the chat, but I'm not going to type a response into the chat. I'll respond verbally in the video, not the chat, because it just takes up too much time. Yeah, WW says you can sing, and then EU says no. Necromancy 2, draw a card. Do this, I guess. And then we'll fuse one of these. Yeah, that would be cool. WW says I'm disappointed. Ha ha ha. But yeah, I definitely don't need to get into yet another side project and waste a lot of time trying to set something up like that.
I am a prisoner of this world's whims.
It would be kind of nice if I could talk directly to my computer and have it type code, but I found I found speaking code whatever programming language is incredibly difficult for speech-to-text software to work, because it's trying to run through normal patterns of speech, and programming is not normal patterns of speech. It's new creative ways of saying something. So it is highly unlikely in normal conversations you would say something like var apple plus pear equals fruits colon 0 semicolon and get all the spacing and spelling and capitalization right on that. But in programming, that's totally something you could do. EU says, in fact, it's a little bit difficult for me to understand songs in English. And then WW says, take a song that can be sung. And EU is saying why. Yeah. I'm with EU on this one. I don't really know where this conversation's going, but okay, I'll let them have it. I don't mind people having side conversations in the chat. I may stop responding and reading it myself. I personally could sing, but I will spare people's ears and not, because it won't sound good. And that's not what I'm here to do. Moving on to video games then. Here we have a game on Steam called Severed Steel, which looks like a first-person shooter game that has a little bit of polish on it. It's probably not much of anything, though.
And sleep.
But yeah, there might be something to this. It's $22.49 English full audio, so we'll put that on the follow list.
I love my sisters.
I'm not a quack. You'll see.
Let's see.
No, my license, give it back.
RetroArch has put out a video of the PS2 version of Half-Life 1 running on PC SX2, which I guess that would be about the only reason why you would want emulation to play Half-Life 1. I think you can pretty much play the PC version fine even today, and there would be really not even a good reason to play the original Half-Life game instead of just playing Black Mesa. I have not heard any complaints. I haven't heard that many complaints about Black Mesa replacing it. But you have to applaud Libretto still showing off ways you can experience the old games in their original forms as much as possible. WW says EU asked why. WW responded with don't know, and then EU says I don't know. I don't listen to songs that much. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely don't think too many people actually listen to the lyrics of songs. Otherwise, they probably would realize how silly some of those lyrics are. And I don't know if too many people listen to music at all these days. And there's definitely different types of music. Video game music is way different than radio music. And movie music is way different than TV music. Video game music in particular, designed to be very repetitive and still not annoying. Designed to be generally not bringing attention to itself. Whereas operatic music, opera music is totally trying to get your attention and be loud and bombastic, if that's the right word. And yeah, TV music often is, if it's actually originally created, it's often just background noise, And if they are actually letting you hear a part of a song, it's usually because they're trying to convince people to buy the CD of that song. And yeah, CW, the CW channel in particular, was owned by Warner Brothers, and they had an active push for many years, and they still do it every now and then, to put Warner Brothers music into their TV shows to promote the music. To a point, the show Charmed was forced to have them, out of the blue, own a nightclub so they could show off musicians. And you see a few shows where just out of nowhere, your people are going to concerts and listening to music for no good reason. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the Call of Duty Vanguard's cross-play beta launch times have been confirmed. PlayStation, Xbox, and PC access times have been detailed. I don't really care about Call of Duty, so I will say go to videogamechronicles.com and check it out yourself if you're interested. They also say that God of War is ending its Norse story because, quote, we didn't want to spend 15 years on the trilogy. So this is an interesting headline because this is basically twice now in as many weeks where somebody involved with the God of War series has said that they are not super enthusiastic about the God of War series and don't want to make a trilogy and don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Previously was the story that the director has left and is working on a different project. So yeah, it's very weird to have such a success in the God of War reboot, or soft reboot, and then have nobody in the higher echelons of the development process enthusiastic about the project after one game. That seems fairly silly. And at a certain point, it's not fair, but it may be true that video game developers just are going to have to suffer for their art if they want to make something good. Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel for 30 years. I think it was 30 years. Yeah, a really long time. Yeah. I'm sure there were a lot of times when Michelangelo was tired of painting the Sistine Chapel. But he did it, and then it stayed intact for a very long time until it burnt down. Which I don't know if the Sistine Chapel part of that and the paintings were just damaged as much. But yeah, that lasted hundreds of years and will always be remembered until it isn't remembered as a major artistic success and creation. Particularly in video games, artists don't get a lot of opportunities to do something new or something that they can really take full control and creative control over. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend most people going into the video game industry in general, but particularly if you want to create an artistic creation, you probably are better off simply you probably are better off simply working as a fan programmer or making something that's not video game at all, such as a comic book or something else like that. Something that can be a passion project that you have complete control over.
Don't be shy.
Unable to compute.
Because there's just too much capitalism also revolving around video games compared to writing a novel or drawing a comic book or programming a fan game where you can have that creative control. And if you want to just be a generic programmer who doesn't have creative control, there are much better paying and better jobs in general out there for programmers making accounting software and such. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Self-Made Devil, which looks like a Chinese mobile game. Doesn't look like much of anything. Early access, 99 cents, English and Chinese. Here we have one that's all Asian characters, another Chinese mobile game, I'm sure. Free to play, Chinese only.
This one's for my family.
Here we have Neutron and the Tri-Spark, which looks like either Bomberman or Pac-Man clone, regardless of which. It's not probably worth $3.99. Here we have Pacific General. I didn't get around to curating any of the games that were left over from Wednesday, so we'll just have to go through most of them. This looks like just a really old game, $4.49 English and German. Here we have Fantasy General, which obviously is just a reskin of Pacific General, from the looks of it. $4.49 English, French, and German. Here we have a mixed reviewed game called Virtual Surfing, 62% positive. Yeah, this is kind of cool looking, but I don't know how you turn this into a full game. Like Wave Race 64, barely even in that case was able to turn a make a video game out of using C-doos. Like, I think if you're gonna make a surfing game, it would have to be much like a skating game where you're just kind of constantly getting momentum and you're constantly going forward. You don't wipe out, and in the case of surfing, you don't run out of wave. But I still, even at that, would expect there to be like rings or races, other people, and it doesn't feel like any of that is there. Graphics cards definitely could make this look very nice, but you also would kind of need some island off in the distance that looks interesting, whereas this looks like you're surfing in the middle of an ever continuing ocean. This is $34.99 English only. That's way too expensive. Here we have Warwind Human Onslaught, which looks like another old real-time strategy game. I don't recognize it. I'm noticing all of these are being published by SNEG and maybe the same developer. This is $4.49. I don't get why game developers and game publishers would decide to release old games on the exact same day. It seems like that's a bad strategy to flood the market when you could, at the very least, you could stagger it a week. You could stagger it 24 hours even, and then there would be at least something different there.
Excited as I am.
You don't
Are
belong
you?
here.
I'm so excited.
Like, it's not like SNEG, a publisher I've never heard of, is going to put out a press release and say, hey, we've released a dozen games on Steam in the same day, and that's going to get it some kind of coverage. Let's see. Here we have Warwind.
How dare you?
Also,
How dare you?
there is a slight issue. Like, at a certain point, if StarCraft ever had come to Steam, there was a thought that I would play StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo 2, things like that. But with the controversies around Activision Blizzard and just a general abandonment of the gaming community of those games, it's hard to get over that hump, certainly. It's still probably fairly historically relevant to play something like Diablo 1 if it was on Steam. That's the only time I'd play it, is if I could get it on Steam. I still would want to own it for historical relevancy reasons, but I would be very frustrated with trying to cover that game and have to just talk about the elephant in the room in nearly every episode, or be directly accused of intentionally not covering the issues around Activision Blizzard.
Talk more later.
I could be cynical potentially and try and run and play like Diablo 1 now, before there's any hard confirmation of the accusations against Activision Blizzard. Then I don't have to talk about it quite as much, but at a certain point that's a cover-up. That's just an intentional cover-up on my part. Like, yeah, and for things like Diablo 1, there's really no reason to play Diablo 1 because you can just play Torchlight and any other game that is inspired by Diablo 1, and then you can just say, well, this was inspired by Diablo 1, but this is a much newer game that, because it's much newer, has major improvements.
You don't belong here.
I'm so excited.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Eastward, which looks like it's a differently animated RPG game. Does not feel like it's made out of an RPG Maker. It's being published by Chucklefish, which I do think I've recognized that publisher, so I think they've done something. You can see there's a decent amount of animation in this original trailer. This is the type of RPG that stands out from the crowd, which is a very busy crowd as far as RPG games. And we can see it's rated very positively, and it's already on my follow list. Is it out of early access now? I guess it is, because it originally was... Nope, I guess it just was published. Maybe I'd put this on the follow list before it'd come out. I guess this gets elevated to the wish list. There's really no reason not to. Let's see what else this Chucklefish made. Wargroove, Inmost, Pathway, Time Spinner, and Risk of Rain. EU says he's leaving for a while, but he may return with more random questions. Okay, thanks for popping by.
Best of luck to you.
Yep. So yeah, Chucklefish has made a few games, but not anything that I'd say is a huge standout hit. Here we have a game on Steam called Love, Truth, and Puzzles, or Love, Truth Puzzle, which looks like your standard low-effort jigsaw puzzle with anime girls as the Subject, $1.19, English only. Here we have World Rally Championship 9, FIA. I don't know what FIA stands for. World Rally Championship. I wouldn't be surprised if FIA is not an English organization, so it has a weird title. It's $19.99, whole bunch of languages, full audio in all of those languages. I'll put that on the follow list. Not sure if rally off-roading is the kind of content that I want to, kind of racing game I want to play, but who knows. Here we have a visit virtual de l'Assemblée Nationale. That's French, obviously, for the National Assembly. I guess so. I assume this is a VR game where you go through the French National Assembly.
Like the moon on the water surface.
French only. You know, some stereotypes are easy to apply to video games that appear on Steam. The stereotype of the French people being rude and not caring about non-French speaking, not one of them, though. In this case, it is an exception, but almost always when I do see a game that supports French, it's usually not the second language or first language of concern in the first place, but it almost always includes English. Now, this VR game, which since it doesn't support English, I have no reason to put it on my wish list or follow list. It might have been funded directly by the French government. So I could see that being a reason, but I don't see anything that actually says that to be true.
A pointed sword
So yeah,
deserves a pointed response.
generally you don't see
Enhance.
just French as a language. See a lot of English only games, ton of English only games. You see a decent amount of Chinese only games. Very rarely do you see Russian only games. They usually are English and Russian. There is definitely a decent amount of Japanese only games, and maybe even a few Korean only games, but that's typically it. Usually when you're coming to Steam, which is based out of the United States, Valve is, at least for now. They may open a New Zealand office at some point in the future.
If I were
Thy little canary.
Like, generally when you're going to Steam, you are going for a global marketplace, and globally, English is the second language spoken most,
Excited as I am.
if not your primary language.
I'm so excited.
Moving on, we have a game with some Asian characters, How to Volleyball, which doesn't look like a good game. 69 cents, English and Chinese. Here we have something that's Shigua? Shigao? I don't know how you pronounce this. Chigao. Maybe. Looks like it's a visual novel game, but it looks a little rough. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a good-looking Chinese visual novel game. English not supported, $11.99 Japanese. No, arguably, I would say that's pretty bad-looking Japanese visual novel game. Leave that. Rush.
Pain and suffering are what I live for.
Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called The Intern, which is mostly negative at 14 reviews. Wow. What is about this game that has people so upset? Because it looks slightly interesting, not amazingly interesting. It's $1.19. Claims to support a whole bunch of languages and full audio. Let's see if we can get the reviews. There's no explanation of the level up system when jumping into the game. It's very hit and miss a bit of the time. And also the story is hard to follow. Some girl's transported to another world and has to fight stuff. It's hard for me to follow. There's no settings, no window options. It's a Chromium bad game engine. Terrible grammar and English translations. Lack of any explanations. Okay. Wow. If anything, the intern is kind of a great example of making a game very appealing. You've got a nice little thumbnail here. You have a nice little visuals on your video. Each of these screenshots, well, they're not showing any heads-up display. Well, that one is. Does show something slightly different and slightly intriguing. And yet, the bait and switch of it has revealed itself in the reviews. And what's really weird is that this must have been in early access earlier, because this came out originally in 2018 and there's no reason why it should show up. It's also being bundled in a hentai big pack, which it doesn't feel like it's a game full of anime porn, so that feels misleading. Next we have a game called My Journey to Your World, which looks like it's a simplistic puzzle game, but they've thrown in some anime girls to try to catch your attention. But yeah, it really seems like all you're doing is spinning these dials to match things. Now, this is free to play and English only. It doesn't have any in-app purchases, so I can't really complain about it too much. If anything, for a free to play game, this looks perfectly acceptable and fine. I don't know how many people are really trying to play free to play games on Steam. It really does kind of feel like a game that would have been better off free to play on cell phones than making a Steam version of it. But yeah, can't really complain about it, but also since it's free, there's no reason for me as a video game critic to look at it. I could just say go check it out now. Here we have a game called Lenny Loose Jocks Goes Walkabout, which I think I had seen a game similar to this. Maybe not this game though. See, I would think maybe this was a point and click adventure and then choose to put it on the follow list because it's a point and click adventure, but there's too many modes here that kind of show that there are some other gameplay elements that I don't think are worth actually playing. $15.99 is also way too expensive for what they're showing you. And it says English full audio, and I kind of believe that's probably true. But yeah. If this was an early 90s game, I might consider it. There's an implication here that this originally came out in 1997. But, you know, even at that, I don't think there's enough historical relevancy here, because this wasn't a game I played in 1997 or knew anything about, so yeah. I think I have to skip that one. Here we have a game called Voidwalker Soul Hunters, which just looks like an asset flip RPG. Doesn't look visually polished, and really empty rooms.
I guess you're looking for a fight.
And I don't think you can do fantasy with empty rooms. English allegedly full audio. Let's go through some more news. Video Game Chronicles says PlayStation's new Wipeout is a mobile game. Wipeout Rush is set for release on iOS and Android in early 2022. I didn't know PlayStation and Sony had the rights to Wipeout as a series. I would have sworn that that was something owned by like Rare or Nintendo. I mean, that's kind of infuriating. The thought that Sony has had the rights to Wipeout for maybe decades and done nothing with it. There should have been a new Wipeout game every new console. Like, every PlayStation has been pathetically low as far as racing games and kid-friendly games. Man, talk about just doing a bad job of running your business. Maybe they just got the rights very recently, but even then, it's still kind of infuriating that you would make it on mobile and not have a proper game come out on console. I mean, it doesn't even have to really be anywhere as good or anywhere comparable to something like to Mario Kart. Just having something should have existed. Moving on, the next Epic Games Store free title has been announced. The Escapist is going to replace Speed Brawl and Tharsis. So yeah, check that out when it happens. There's a couple of games, I believe Titan Quest, and from the same creators of Titan Quest, there was another game that are free right now on Steam. I saw that on slickdeals.net, so I think you probably could just look up Titan Quest on Steam and get it for free. They're old games, but I didn't own them, so. And I do enjoy getting free games whenever I can. Video Game Chronicles says Gran Turismo 7's campaign requires an internet connection to prevent cheating. The only part of the game that doesn't need an online connection is the arcade mode, which at a certain point, the concept of preventing cheating in a single player campaign is unacceptable. I think we will potentially in the next couple decades have a push to say I deserve a right to cheat if I want to cheat. It's my game. I paid for it. I should be able to play it the way I want to play it, particularly if it's not affecting other people. What we don't want to see is a push to the idea of labeling increasingly more obscure things as cheating as a way of disenfranchising people and stopping them from being able to play the games in general. Yeah, it would be so much easier for game players, game developers to claim that all the people who are posting messages they don't like posted in the chat or in the voice chat just could be arbitrarily accused of cheating and then disallowed from playing the game ever anymore. Because then there's a competing narrative and who knows which one's true. Yeah. On top of that, it is also just incredibly stupid to make a system that's going to waste bandwidth and require a server to be always online to let people play the single player parts of the game. And I assume the campaign is single player. Yeah, that just does seem
This whip is an
seem kind of
extension of myself.
too much.
File the battlefield.
Daisy.
I love the
You
chaos.
don't belong here.
But also, I guess I don't really care that much too, and that's kind of probably part of the problem is that Gran Turismo 7 can put out always online requirements, and there's going to be considerably less pushback than, say, Halo putting an always online requirement for all the military people that want to play the next Halo. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles, Sega and Atlas are set to announce a new RPG at the Tokyo Game Show. It seems like this new RPG, though, will be a mobile game. I've seen other bits of news, so I wouldn't expect too much there. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there are 2 new RPGs coming from Sega and Atlas, one being a mobile game and one being a more traditional console game. So...
Promises. This is my fate after all. Allow me to take my cut.
See you at the next show.
Moving on, the Resident Evil Village voice actor hints that he may return in a new game. Neil Newborn played Heisenberg in the Village and Nikolai in the Resident Evil 3 remake. I think it's fairly stupid, though, to listen to voice actors. I think they sometimes lie and say that they are doing something on the project on a new game when they really aren't, or they are working to do some voice acting on some new game, but that new game may never come out, or they may be totally confused or being totally lied to. It's very common and probably should be illegal, but it's fairly common to work at a video game as a voice actor and not really know what that video game is, and that's one of the things that the push towards unionization of the video game voice actors was all about, is that they were not being given a fair description of what the job work would entail and what project they were working on, so they couldn't negotiate fairly as far as how much they would be willing to do the work for. And a lot of that involved being told you're going to do voice acting and then showing up and then having to do face acting as they're 3D scanning your face, or doing actual physical stunt acting as they're 3D scanning your body, or doing prolonged 12-hour shifts of yelling and screaming, which is not really what you would expect. That story is pretty much gone away, probably because there's been no progress towards unionization of voice actors, and now there's more just a general push towards unionization of all video game developers. But even that story is going to have some successes before people get bored with it and stop caring. This is probably bigger news for European fans than it is for US fans, but Video Game Chronicles says the UK games industry has paid tribute to the late Sir Clive Sinclair. He was the creator of the ZX80, ZX81, and ZX Spectrum, who died at the age of 81. Now, I say ZX, but since it's mostly a European UK console, it would be more often referred to as the ZX80, ZX81. I don't know how many people got the 81, and then the ZX Spectrum was the most popular one. These were early first generation video game consoles, although also kind of PCs. So there's there's definitely some fandom there. It also kind of highlights where there was just a differentiation between the first generation of games and game consoles, as there was more of a focus to have a keyboard and make it be more of a PC experience that barely could play video games at best, whereas the Nintendo Entertainment System came back in a direct response to things like the ZX Spectrum to make it a toy, to make it have controllers and not keyboards. The Famicom did have keyboard attachments, and they intentionally didn't bring that over to the Nintendo Entertainment System. And there was just no quality control for those first generation games, game consoles, and there was a lot of piracy going on even in that early first generation of games, as people were incredibly poor. I don't think people in the United States probably know how poor a lot of people were in the UK. Like, it is not a particularly rich country during the 80s and 60s and 70s. And that is where the whole punk movement came from. Having the bobby pins in the clothing was literally created because none of them could sew and none of them could afford new clothes, so they were bobby pinning their clothes together to stop it from falling apart. And then all they could really do is listen to music and try to make music, because they couldn't get jobs unless they wanted to work in a factory for the rest of their life. I don't really have a lot to say though about the ZX series of consoles, because it's not like there's really any good games there that I know of, or any real relevancy there. You're going to be talking about very, very simplistic text-based games or ASCII art-based games. And dying at the age of 81 is aspirational, frankly, more than anything. Like, sure, everybody would love to live forever, but 81's a decent age to die at compared to, say, 20. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says a confidentiality filing reveals that Nintendo is planning on a new Switch controller, Nintendo 64 Switch controller. I wouldn't be surprised if this is sold only through their website in extremely limited numbers. I could also see that what they're thinking is that they would bring to their eShop Nintendo 64 games, and if they're going to bring to their eShop Nintendo 64 games, then they need a Nintendo 64 controller. But it's going to be fairly silly if they actually do bring out a Nintendo 64 controller.
Nothing stops me once I got my speedy boots on.
It is speculative, though, that it is actually a Nintendo 64 controller, and we may very well find that it is actually just a different kind of controller in general. More traditional controller. Which, honestly, the Nintendo Switch could definitely do with a bigger, scaled up size controller. If they're not going to change anything else, just make the Joy-Cons bigger for bigger hands and adults. You've got your kid audience as much as you're going to get your kids' audience, so move on to trying to capture the adult audience. Moving on ourselves, here we have a game on Steam called Find Love or Die Trying, which apparently is a dating sim. Which, yeah, seems like you've got some very different personalities being depicted with each of these characters. Visual novel, it's free to play, and then a $10 fan pack, English full audio. Let's see, 4 hours. Let's see, male, female, or non-binary choice of protagonist. So make your pick. Well, there could be something there, and it could also just be nothing. And because it's free, once again, there's really no reason for me to put it on the follow list.
Fancy footwork. Get ready to fly.
Mean son of a gun, ain't ya?
But I will say it does look pretty. Next we have Hot and Lovely 4, which is also tagged as a dating sim visual novel, but to me it actually looks like it's more of a card matching game with
Brighter future for
maybe some nudity that's being blurred out. Although it's not tagged with nudity. It's $1.99 with a free adult patch. And yeah, several languages supported, but there's only 13 levels. So that seems like that is asking too much for 13 levels. And in all fairness, I think 13 levels in general is just too few anyways. So there's 6 here and then 7 here. So here's your 13 levels as they are. It's this fairy girl, this blonde girl, which looks a lot like this one of this girl, one of this girl, and 3 of this girl. And that's all you get.
Get ready to fly. No.
So yeah, again, not a game that really needs to be on the follow list. Here we have Dwarfs Cart Mountain Brothers, which is a Picross game. It's kind of nicely polished in the background, but doesn't really feel like there's much here. Let's see, $4.99, 150 levels, a whole bunch of languages. Not a terrible price, but I don't think I'd ever bother to play a game like this. I do like that it's just like giving you more feedback as you're drawing things, and you're drawing things fairly quickly and easily. And so that's a nice polish level of polish. Here we have Aquarist, My First Job, which seems like you're taking care of an aquarium. Briefly thought about getting an aquarium not for fish, but for putting a PC in it and submerging it in like mineral oil, but that's a messy, dumb idea, really, and not worth it. It's typically a thing you'll see YouTubers do for views, but then they don't have to live with the messy cleanup and live with the PC they're building. I did have fish for a brief time, and then they died very quickly, and I very quickly decided I did not want to try and have fish survive and die and be replaced on a near weekly basis. I know some people have managed to maintain fish a lot longer than that, but they don't respond to you. They are fairly far away from dogs, and so if you want very little interaction, a fish is a good pet, but if you want actual interaction, a dog is a better pet. Cats even are better pets if you want
You'll make a good
a
test subject.
minimal amount of interaction, but some.
Sorry, but this ends
Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Blood Wash, which
Are you working
if it didn't look so terrible, there might be a thought here. Serial killer, putting people's heads into a washing machine. That is probably something that's been done in the movie. This is $7.19 English, allegedly full audio. But the actual graphics here makes this look pretty bad. And while this is rated very positively, I cannot get over these graphics. That's just really ugly. Okay. Could do this.
Are you as excited as
And then
I
I
am?
could evolve this.
Scatter like the blossoms.
If you want me to hurt you,
Then we could
just
play
say the
this.
word.
And then
Scoop out your guts.
An opportunity.
let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Beta Escape, which just looks like a low effort escape room. $3.49 English and French. Here we have a text-based game called Wrath of Sentinel. Not Wrath of the Sentinel. $3.95 English only. Here we have a game called Socialism Simulator with a anime girl, and it's showing the hammer and sickle, well-known symbol of communism, not socialism. And the art looks pretty bad. Yep. I think you need to be a little bit smarter in your political economic models if you're going to make a game called Socialism Simulator. At least smart enough to know that the hammer and sickle is a symbol of communism, and at least be able to know the general stated definitions of communism versus socialism. Communism being generically speaking the idea that the state, the government owns everything, and you're expected to work for the state or be imprisoned or killed, whereas socialism is, well, rarely implemented correctly, is the idea that the people own everything, not the state, not the government, and the government is just the curator of things, and you're expected to work as a good citizen, otherwise you're either imprisoned or killed. Compared to capitalism, which is the idea that individuals own everything or should own everything, and the government just curates things, some things that it owns, and you're expected to work because otherwise you're imprisoned or thrown in or killed. It's pretty much there's a continuous line there, like, and yeah, that is pretty much the truth. Even in the United States, capitalism, like, you can theoretically not work under capitalism, but you are almost certainly going to incur some debt at some point through the government that would require you to work. Otherwise, you're not going to pay that speeding ticket, you're not going to pay that parking fine, you're not going to pay the taxes, and as soon as you owe the U.S. government money, then you probably are at that point on probation, and one of the rules of probation is that you have to work, otherwise you're thrown in jail. On top of that, there is a system in the United States where just structurally and historically, minorities have been imprisoned for minor crimes they probably shouldn't have been imprisoned for, and then as soon as you're imprisoned, that is the one case in which slavery is acceptable and you are forced to work whether you want to or not, or you're thrown in solitary confinement. Yeah.
A pointed sword deserves a
And
pointed response.
it's also almost certainly true in every socialist and communist country too, that you are forced to work at some level if you're imprisoned. But it's pretty bad in the United States. I'm supposed to be talking about video games, but yeah. At least know the difference between capitalism, socialism, and communism on the basic levels. There's been mixed implementations of all of those systems that I think always succeed a lot better than attempts to be purely capitalistic or purely socialistic or purely communistic. So there's a mixed system there, and there is possibility at some point that a whole new concept and a whole new system might get thought up and created. There's also, as far as economic theories, a lot of dogma and religious fervent beliefs around those systems that are frankly crazy.
Pain and suffering are what I live for.
And of course, communism was turned into a boogeyman in the United States, and socialism to a certain point too, even though a significant number of the United States allies are socialist countries, or would claim to be socialist countries. But yeah, propaganda has brainwashed a lot of people to think that the authoritarian and totalitarian styles of governance are equal to and mean the same thing as the style of economic governance. So, like, a dictatorship in a lot of people's mind is the same as communism, and it isn't. There's theories on how you run your economy and how you believe money works, if money really does work. Arguably, money probably doesn't work in the way people think it does. But yeah, there's a big difference between how you run your economy and how you run your general governance, your general government. Whether you're going to be an authoritarian government that just makes rules and regulations and forces everybody to follow it, or maybe you're going to be a bit more lax in your government and let the people do whatever they want. There are also different ways as far as choosing the leadership, as far as whether you're going to be a democratic government or a republic. The United States is actually a republic. We do not have a democratic process in which the leaders are elected. We elect electors, and that oddly breaks the system up. Or you can just have a president for life. Or you can have a theocracy where the church, some religion, runs everything. And yeah, a lot of that stuff does not get taught well in history class. Why am I rambling about any of this though? Yeah, I would say video games, to get back to video games, pretty bad about representing history too. We get a lot of military, historical World War I, World War II shooters, but that's pretty much it. There's no real talk about events or what happened or what people actually were fighting for or believed in. It all gets boiled down into very stupid, basic concepts, because the games themselves are just designed around the generic concept of running and shooting. Here we're looking at this game Skatebird, which maybe this would be a decent skating game, so it is mostly positive. $17.99, bunch of languages. We've heard a lot about this game. I guess I put this on the wish list. It's already got 30 positive reviews. So, by my standards, I say yes. I'm not incredibly impressed by what this game looks like. And I have to really question if there was ever a chance that it was going to be any better. That it is
Defile the battlefield.
seemingly very difficult
I love
for
chaos.
game developers to make skating games. Seems to take a lot of work. Seems like there's just not a lot of animation. We might be at a point now where there's enough sharing in animation where you can make animations specifically as far as posing characters who are riding on a skateboard. And so somebody could go to like the Unity or Unreal store and sell those animations, and then there could be multiple games with those types of leg movements and such. But that now would be potentially a time where skating games could come back. But even at that, that really is just going to encourage a lot of people to make low effort asset flip skating games. And that would suck. Tony Hawk is just the name of the game as far as skating for most people, so a new Tony Hawk game coming out is the only one that is likely to succeed. And there have been some other AAA skating games that have come and gone with very little fanfare. I think generally people just don't want to play skating games, and that makes sense, certainly. Where if you want to skate, you probably really want to skate in the real world. You probably don't want to play a video game to skate.
Enhance. Fire.
There's very little equipment required, maybe slightly expensive equipment if you're going to get a really fancy skateboard to skate. The biggest problem though is finding a place where you can skate, or figuring out how to run from cops when they try and arrest you and ticket you for skating.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
Next we have a game on Steam called The Amazing American Circus, which looks to me like it is a Deepest Dungeon style game, going for more of a generic card game idea instead of Deepest Dungeons fighting monsters concept, which I could see that being very interesting, to get away from the darkness of Deepest Dungeon, which is both visually and thematically fairly dark. Whole bunch of languages, English, full audio. This is already on the fall list, so this is one I'd already heard about. But I don't know if I'd really want to play this too much. Kind of feels like you'd run out of gimmicks fairly quickly. And honestly, I desperately would need to play Deepest Dungeon first, since I own some of that, but not all the DLC of it. And I imagine what's going to happen is there have been several Deepest Dungeon style clones that have come out over the past 6 months, and probably are going to come out over the next 6 months. And then at some point there may be a Deepest Dungeon 2 that comes out that is the only one people are really interested in. Of course, it may be I keep having to fix the mistake of coloring my perception and reality based on Giant Bomb mostly, and other mainstream video game journalism. It may have been the case that nobody was really that interested in even Deepest Dungeon 1, so it may have been slightly popular, but nowhere as popular as it was made out to be. Alright, well, you do this. And then do this.
Forever and ever more.
Then you hit this
Melt under my
and this. Next, we have a game on Steam called I Am Fish,
Hey, genius tech suit.
which this is the fish game where you're rolling around in a fishbowl. 77% positive. Maybe I'd wait a little bit on this one. I think I'm gonna be a little bit conservative. It's $15.99, whole bunch of languages. Yep. It has 30 reviews at 49, but it's teetering there at mostly positive. I'm still not 100% sure what this game really plays like either. It looks like it might be interesting, but it also looks like it could just be some cutscenes and then some very simplistic I Am Bread style levels. Could be very linear instead of having a lot of variety and a lot of open world elements. Right.
Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you?
Scatter like the
This.
If you want me to hurt you, just say the word. I'm gonna scoop out your guts.
Someone call tech support.
Let's see. Gametsu has some articles here. The former Capcom USA and Europe CEO, Kichiro Urata, has joined Sony Interactive Entertainment as the head of Japan Asia Partner Development and Relations. Urata left Capcom in August after 10 years. So, that's weird that you would bring in a different Japanese person to run the Japan Asia Partner Development and Relations instead of just having at least one person from Sony of Japan's office get promoted or moved over to that position. I really have to wonder if we aren't starting to see a case where Japan in particular has adopted a policy of slighting and abandoning its aging population. It was fairly established that if you worked for a company in Japan, you would work there forever, and that the unions would protect you and ensure you would not leave that job. And it was considered incredibly disrespectful to be fired, or dishonorable to be fired, or to quit and leave a job. And it's still fairly unlikely for a Japanese person to quit or leave their job. But recently, in the past 5 years or so, it does feel like these Japanese companies are increasingly trying to get rid of old people, and not really even replace them with young people, just trying to consolidate all the employment and all the money and all the power to the top CEO levels and nobody else. And inherently it is probably just an echo of what has happened decades prior in the United States, creating an ever increasing divide between the lower class and the extremely uber rich upper class. There is no real middle class in the United States. People don't like to be told that they are lower class, even if they are upper lower class, but they are. Once again, I need to be careful not to get into two economic rants in one day. No. Moving on, Gamatsu says Gunvolt Chronicles Luminous Avenger 9 or IX2 has detailed stories and settings and characters. So I guess you could check out this article to see these characters. It seems like there's very little artwork here to show off as far as the characters, but a lot of these Gematsu articles really put out one picture for each character. A lot of robot girls. More than I would have expected normally.
This whip is an extension of myself.
Let's defile the battlefield.
Tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
A flash of metal, a silent night.
I'm sick of being whipsy daisy.
This,
I love chaos.
and if I can just get one victory with the Bloodlust characters, I'll stop playing as the Bloodlust characters. Let's see, Gematsu has Deltarune Chapter 2 for PC launching September 17th. Apparently this is a surprise release. I thought Deltarune was a standalone story. So I'm more shocked by the fact that it was a unfinished story than I am that they're surprise releasing chapter 2 and not even saying the final chapter. There's probably going to be a chapter 3. Again, Deltarune being the sequel to the other game that was hyped up a lot by Giant Bomb and other mainstream game developers. Undertale. Yeah. Like Deltarune being the sequel to Undertale, you would expect more hype around it. But I don't know how many people actually even played Undertale. I think I own that game as amongst the hundreds of games I own and haven't gotten around to playing.
Appointed sword.
Moving on, Gematsu says Tales of Arise shipments and digital sales have topped 1 million. It is the fastest selling title in the free franchise. Gosh. Okay, well. I guess that shows that there was a audience, probably heavily Japanese audience, looking for a new JRPG. Is there something specific about the Tales series that would make it appeal more? It could be that the Tales of Arise game is maybe slightly older looking characters, taller characters, not really going for the chibi art style or the moe art style of anime. Whereas Atelier Ryza maybe goes a little bit more cutesy and a more chibi. And I suppose there hasn't been a new Final Fantasy in a while, so it may just be that people were itching for a new JRPG. In comparison, the Tales of Vesperia game digital and shipments and digital sales have topped 2 million. This took 5 years for it to happen. You can see this outfit's a little bit more lewd, so it may very well just have been that people were itching to get back to the Tales series. And yeah, Tales of Berseria seems like it's been out maybe a little too long. There's definitely a concern though as far as whether or not I would want to cover the Tales series for whatever part of the Tales series is available on PC. It could just be a really long series to cover. And I think it's probably important to recognize that I think the Tales series are action RPGs, so there may very well be other JRPGs out there that are turn-based and that they may not really compare to each other.
This whip is an reflection of myself.
Allow me to bestow a crimson.
Tales of Vesperia. Obviously, this was all one announcement. Definitive Edition have topped 1.5 million, and the main game has topped 2.8 million. If you maybe if you combine both the original version and the Definitive Edition. Of course, yeah, that gets overwhelming certainly when you see that there's several different Tales series and they all have different characters and kind of different art styles. It kind of just feels like Final Fantasy. This one looks much more cartoony and colorful. That being said, still very positive, still on my wish list as at least being viable to play.
Whoopsie daisy!
Now
Let's see. The Legend of Heroes Kura no Kisekai limited time free DLC set 40th anniversary thank you Megabots has been announced. It includes costumes, attachments, and more. And clearly there's a summer theme of swimwear. So yeah, the guy has some swimwear. And then I bet there's 2 or 3 girls that have swimwear. And the guy has no nipples. Yep. Not particularly out of norm swimwear, as it were. Normally, though, you'll see games like this offer content like that for a high premium. So them giving it out for free is kind of interesting. And something I would like to see them do more often than not. Also seems like they only really bothered to put swimwear suits for 2 of the characters, but then they're showing several other characters getting attachments and modifications to their outfits. Cat ears, dog ears, fox ears, cow ears, sun visors. Let's play this.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
And then there's something here. Metallic covers for the tactical ornament, whatever that is.
Lose yourself in this final dance.
Yep. This is kind of a great example of DLC content that isn't really worth spending money on, too. So it's very nice to see it free. As a way of promoting your game and keeping people interested in playing your game or coming back to your game.
I'll see you in purgatory.
Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you?
Scatter like the blossoms.
If you want me to hurt you, just say the word. I'm gonna scoop out your
That was almost amusing.
Let's see. Moving on, Gamatsu says Bandai Namco has announced their Tokyo Game Show 2021 online schedule. Apparently, they're going to do something with Dragon Ball Fighter Z, which I thought they were kind of done with that. And then here is Idolmaster and Sword Art Online, I think. Yeah. Tales of Arise. Is that Shadowverse? I don't think so. Maybe Evoland, maybe? And then My Time as a Slime. That time I got reincarnated as a slime. So yeah, there could be some interesting announcements, but also it could be basically nothing. do this.
With this payment, darkness stands with you.
Flash of metal, a silent night.
Let your soul succumb
Like
to
the
the
moon
void.
on the water's surface.
Just kill myself on accident there. Sega to announce a new RPG at Tokyo Game Show 2021. Let's see, this is the one that they think is probably a RPG game. Let's see, they have a teaser trailer. Smartphone RPG game. There is a real question, if you are going to make a lot of RPG games and JRPG games for smartphones, how are any of those going to differentiate themselves from other people? Because a flood of 50 to 100 new JRPGs does not likely create a huge audience of people who want to play JRPGs on their cell phone. I can't imagine really wanting to do that on a cell phone much at all. Like right now in particular, you're not likely to have as much of a commute as you used to even, where it would make sense to play a cell phone game for a lot of time. And I'm constantly playing a game on my cell phone and it's constantly draining the battery. I charge it at least 5 or 6 times a day and leave it plugged in most of the time. Otherwise,
Come now, let us play together.
Moving on, Blood Rain Revamped and Blood Rain 2 Revamped have been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch due out this fall. I assume these are just the remasters of the terminal cut editions. So they're just giving them the revamp title instead of the terminal cut title, which frankly that's a better name and they should have thought of that first.
Check out my fancy footwork.
What this doesn't seem to lead to, though, is any kind of guarantee that there would be a new Blood Rain game to come out anytime soon. I don't think there's any high chance of that. Yogamatsu has the same article that Wipeout Rush has been announced for iOS and Android. Sherlock Holmes Chapter 1 for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC launches November 16th. PS4 and Xbox One versions due out a few weeks later. This is called Chapter 1, but I think it's a full game from Frogwares. I don't think it's an episodic game. They're calling it Chapter 1. As in, it's a collection of maybe several mysteries? Or it's just one big mystery that is one of the first mysteries that Sherlock Holmes ever did. They're trying to really reinvent Sherlock Holmes and make him a younger, more appealing character than... And yeah, I think you work better that way in video game form. Yep. There's a long list of Frogwares Sherlock Holmes games that have come out in the past, unfortunately, and that have been less than stellar. So, I also wouldn't be surprised if there is a certain amount of hesitancy to play a new Sherlock Holmes game. Sherlock Holmes and the Devil's Daughter was supposed to be the first game in a whole reboot of Sherlock Holmes games that were supposed to be a lot better, and they were going to put a lot more effort into it. And in all fairness, I think they did put a lot more effort into it. It just didn't come out as good as people would have liked it to.
I suppose I've lost some of my edge.
Get ready to fly! Get ready to fly! You wouldn't! I'm so excited!
Moving on, Gamatsu says Microid has signed an agreement with Taito to produce 2 new games. Both titles due out in 2022. That's very early info. Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife for PSVR launches October 7th. First I've heard of this game, but it is also a PlayStation VR game, which that's fairly weird also. Like, we're kind of expecting a announcement of a new PlayStation VR headset fairly quickly in the next 6 months to a year. So this might be like the first game to try and come out for a new PlayStation VR set. This looks interestingly like a somewhat thought out horror game based on this trailer. I don't know if it really would be much of a game though, being stuck behind PlayStation VR. It's always a kind of deal killer.
Are you as excited as I am? Well, are you?
Scatter like the blossom.
If you want me to hurt you, just I'm gonna scoop out your guts.
Save yourself.
Tenacity will exterminate
Get ready
you,
to
Virgil.
fly! You wouldn't!
This deck I've built is just terrible. Let's see, Death's Gambit Afterlife for the Switch and PC launches September 30th. Which one is Death's Gambit?
I shall cradle the world once more.
It's a Metroidvania hack and slash game. And this is the Afterlife is an expansion, DLC expansion. I could see playing Death's Gambit as a kind of Rogue Legacy sequel, although I think Rogue Legacy 2 is already out, so I don't know why you wouldn't just play that, but yeah. I don't know, though, if I could really justify playing Death's Gambit having just, or having almost completed playing Binding of Isaac Rebirth. That probably has worn me out as far as playing roguelike games for a while. Or at the very least, if I was going to play a roguelike game, I'd want it to be a really popular one, a really well recognizable one. The game Untitled launches September 30th for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. I think we may have already talked about this, but now we have a date. Seems like it's a top-down hack and slash game, but it seems like it has a decent amount of polish on it. So, kind of a Metroidvania experience, it seems like, too. Yeah, that would be a very different type of Metroidvania experience, so I could see playing it on day one if I somehow got the game for free or cheap on day one, although, yeah, I'm still very far behind playing old games. And then let's see. Gmode Archives Plus, Ketsui Kizuna Jigoku Taichi DX for Switch launches September 30th in Japan. More of these, I believe, shoot 'em up games are getting released. GameDeveloper.com has an article here, featured blog, what I learned from a 14-year passion project, which, I mean, honestly, you should have learned something after 4 years. It took you 10 more years to realize that your passion project is taking too long. I mean, I can get it, certainly, though. Being passionate about something can blind you from a lot of reality.
Excited as I am.
particularly
You?
realities such as you're wasting your time.
I'm so excited.
Check out that article if it interests you. And then they also have a featured blog article here exploring the sonic foundations of the audio-only adventure The Veil Shadow of the Crown. Which, yeah. Probably a fairly slow news day because that's pretty much all the news. We've got a few more tabs and then I think we'll probably be close to being done. Here we have a game called Jujubos Puzzle, which just looks like a simplistic ladder and shoot game. I know there's a name for these types of games, but I forgot the name of it. $2.09, English, Portuguese, Brazil, Spanish, Latin America. You know what this is Lemmings. I was thinking this was like maybe Dig Dug might be the name of that game, but no, this actually is a Lemmings game. Does that change anything? No, I don't think I want to play just a generic Lemmings clone. You would basically have to make a new Lemmings game that potentially even convince me to play it. But even then, I don't know if I'd want to play that. Lemmings wasn't particularly a good game, it was just a very prevalent game, just out there when it came out. Here we have a game on Steam called Lola the Escape, which looks like it's a frustration precision platforming game with a lot of deadly traps, and you're playing as a cow. $5.94, whole bunch of languages. Here we have FBG Arcade Machine, which just looks like a garbage asset flip game for $8.99, English only. Here we have a game called Spooky Halloween, which looks like nothing of interest. Just calling it an open world sandbox game. $6.79 single player with split screen co-op or PvP. English, allegedly full audio. Yep. Much like the games where you run around as a dog, running around as a cat is at its core not something of interest. You have to do more, certainly, to make it interesting. Here we have a game called Dark Runner, which obviously suffers from dark screenshot syndrome. Just a generic low effort game. $6.29, English and Czech. Here we have a game called Rift Adventures, which looks a little bit more polished. I think this one might deserve a follow. $5.99, English, Portuguese, Brazil. There's a decent chance that there's nothing really here, but I don't think I can immediately dismiss it. And then, like a rabbit and a fox working together, I guess. Put that on the fall list.
Pity is for the weak.
Soul's not ripe yet.
See, GameDeveloper.com, the mobile publisher Azure, has nabbed a minority stake in the app developer Skyrocket for $2.2 million. Check that out if you're interested. According to Gamatsu, the rhythm action game 6 Star Gate Star Trail has been announced for Switch and PC. Another Japanese anime rhythm action game. Going definitely for more of the Moe chibi art style, or Moe art style, I guess is the right one. Actual game not looking particularly interesting, which that tends to be the case. There, for lack of a better term, there is just a amount of cynicism that seems to center around rhythm games, where they either do sell in Japan well enough to make the creators of them happy, or the creators of them think they sell in Japan, and that lets them continuously get made.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
Check out my fancy footwork.
Okay.
Get ready to
Just
fly.
attack there and attack there, I guess. Let's see. Komatsu says the Castlevania Advanced Collection has been rated for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch, and PC in Taiwan. So, another rating for the unannounced collection appears. It was first rated in June 18th in Australia. It's going to presumably include Castlevania Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Area of Sorrow. So, fairly old Castlevania games, but there aren't any new ones. Let's see, Komatsu, the Playism Game Show Premium Edition is set for September 25th. 16 titles apparently going to be shown. I believe Playism, mostly known for Japanese games, I guess, but I thought they made visual novels, but they're saying Bright Memory Infinite, Gnosia, Record of the Lowest Ward, Deed Lit, and Wonderland, and the Sealed Ampule, and none of those are visual novels, so I guess I'm wrong about what kind of games they tend to publish. Gamatsu has the updated Famitsu sales, showing the rest of them. Tales of Arise for PS4 took the #1 spot, which is interesting. And then Tales of Arise 5 took the #3, but WarioWare took the #2. I guess Tales of Arise did not come out on the Switch, because I am not seeing it listed. And then Ys Monstrum Nox, Ys 9 Monstrum Nox is 9th, and NBA 2K22 for the PS4 is 12th. And then for the Nintendo Switch it is 17th. Then F1 2021 is debuting in 26th position, and Sonic Colors Ultimate debuts in the 27th position. That's pretty bad. And yeah, we are still seeing massive sales victories for the Switch compared to the PS5 and PS4 combined, or the PS5 Digital Edition, PS5 Regular Edition, PS4 combined. And we are still seeing the Xbox Series S sell fairly well, although the X didn't sell anywhere as well as it has in the past. And then the new 2DS LL. I wonder how much of that has to do with availability.
Let's defile the battlefield.
Darn it. I may have been able to win this one if I'd played that turn. Video Game Chronicles has the same article about the Castlevania GBA collection. So, same story. Here we have a game on Steam called First Class Escape: The Train of Thought, which looks like it might be a decent escape the room game. Worth a follow, at least $6.29, English only, third party EULA, was it? Yeah, third party and user license agreement. Here we have one called Hisato no Saku, which looks like a very simplistic Game Boy styled game. $4.99, English only. The new PlayStation 5 model is no better or worse than the launch model, according to Digital Foundry. Which, yeah. So we have now heard from 3 different sources, 3 different claims about the new model. One claiming it was worse, or could be worse. One claiming it was better, or could be better. And now one claiming it is equal. So, yeah, I bet on almost all metrics, it probably is just similar enough that it doesn't matter. That would be what they would go for generally in a model refresh. Just a slightly lighter, slightly cheaper to build version of the PlayStation 5. And yeah, at a certain point that just points out that those kind of articles are not even worth really paying any attention to until a lot of people confirm that something terrible has been done or something good has been done. Wait till the bad news hits a fever pitch and is getting reported by a lot of people before you even pay attention to it. That's a great way to save yourself some time in life. Video Game Chronicles also says a 500 gigabyte Xbox Series XS storage expansion card is reportedly coming soon. This would be a cheaper alternative to Seagate's 1 terabyte. Yeah, I could see them going down to 500 gigabytes. I bet they don't go any lower than that, though. Particularly with the chip shortage, I could see reasoning behind it. Behind that idea.
What a shame.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
That won't kill him.
What adorable, ephemeral lives.
GameDeveloper.com. WB Games has hired David Hewitt to be the studio head of Monolith Productions. Monolith doing the Mordor game and I forgot what this one was called. And then Fear, a game they haven't done in a long time. And this one, Spies Among Us, what is? In a lot of ways, the team at Monolith now is not the team that made Fear or made this, and honestly, they were heavily hamstrung in the Mordor games. Also WB Games has just been acquired, so there's a lot of shuffling of the deck chairs on the Titanic potentially. I don't know if I really believe that WB Games or Monolith is going to go out of business, but I could totally understand if they did choose to go that direction and just license out WB properties to other game developers instead of having an in-house team. Okay. We could summon 2 of these. Or we could do this.
With his payment, darkness stands with you.
A flash of metal, a silent night.
Let your soul succumb to the void. Blot the light.
You have a good eye.
Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says Omdia has run an analysis, and they say in-app ad revenue is growing faster than in-app user spending. Okay, good to know. Here we have a game on Steam called Evan Quest, which... I think this is probably just an asset flip game. I don't think there's really anything here. 99 cents, English only. Here we have a game called Sailing Stone, which also looks like an asset flip. For $7.19, English allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Kickball, which looks like nothing of interest. $1.59, English only. Here we have a game called Drag Engineer. Yeah, trying to figure out drag coefficients in a video game sounds like something that would be really annoying. And see, they're trying to sell this as a programming game, but I don't know if this looks like an interesting game in general. $3.99, English and Chinese. Game developer also has the obituary for the ZX Spectrum creator Clive Sinclair, which, yeah, it's just a couple of paragraphs if you want to check it out. Here we have a game called Murder Diaries. This looks like this might just be a walking simulator. Looks a little too out there and random. Yeah, just flying around, looking at assets that have been flipped. This is $7.99, English only. No to that. Here we have a game called Tale of Iron, which looks like it might be a interesting action RPG game. I don't think it's card based. And I like the art style, so I'll put it on the fall list. $22.49 is definitely asking a lot, though, as far as the price. English, full audio. Put this on the fall list, but man, I'd have to get that on sale. Let's see, Monster Hunter Rise Cross Mega Man Collection begins September 24th. So you can make your Palamute look like Rush from Mega Man. Check that out if you're interested. Bubble Bobble 4 Friends, the Baron's Workshop for PC launches September 30th. Apparently this puzzle platformer includes a stage creator on PC, which I don't think the original game had. Alright, well, that looks interesting. I'm not going to bother to watch this whole video. GameDeveloper.com says the former Destiny Halo composer now owes Bungie thousands after being found in contempt of court. The Destiny Halo soundtrack composer Marty O'Donnell has been found in contempt of court for posting music assets on YouTube and Bandcamp. Was there an injunction telling him he couldn't do that? Yeah, because I don't know how you get found in contempt of court before that happens. Apparently he owes them $100,000. I'm sure they'll never see even a small fraction of that. Let's see, this is really scary as any kind of artist or creator to say, I created this thing and I can't even make a portfolio online and show people music I composed. O'Donnell had successfully sued Bungie for firing him without cause when he was booted from the company in 2015, but that victory had come with a price. The court ruled that the composition titled Music of the Spheres, an ambitious, initially unreleased project created by O'Donnell collaborator Michael Salvatore, and with input from former Beatles member Paul McCartney, was property of Bungie, not O'Donnell. Interesting. So there's this big Paul McCartney involved music that maybe was worth a lot more than $100,000. The court ordered O'Donnell to return all material related to producing music of the Spheres or the rest of the Destiny soundtrack, and was forbidden from sharing any of it publicly. Bungie finally relented to releasing a version of the music of the Spheres on its web store in 2018. Well, in 2019, so there was an injunction basically saying you cannot release this. Fast forward to 2019 when for some reason O'Donnell began uploading rough versions of music of the Spheres to YouTube and Bandcamp. That prompted Bungie to take legal action. This might be the first case of a potential copyright lawsuit that ends up in an actual large judgment that maybe they'll actually see some of that money, but probably not that much. He has also been ordered to post messages on his distribution channels that he does not own the rights to the music of the Spheres, and asking anyone who downloaded the versions he posted to delete them. Let's see. O'Donnell's legal team is still contesting the $100,000 fine, apparently arguing that it is unreasonable, which in all fairness it is an unreasonable fine, but the standard for unreasonable fines from a judge, when you do the exact opposite of what a judge tells you to do, is extremely high, and I think they will find that the $100,000 fine falls within their own self-determination of reasonableness. Oh, so I missed the whole Take-Two opportunities. Well, whatever. I guess that saves me some time as far as trying to find private matches. Today has been a really bad day as far as Shadowverse. Trying to get victories. Let's see. Gematsu has an article here. A Chinese action RPG called Wu Chang Fallen Feathers has been announced. Which, let's see if we can catch some of that. I feel like even if you were contesting the decision that you don't own Music of the Spheres, you still are going to be held to an injunction and an order from a judge. So you really, really shouldn't have done that. And he clearly is irate and not, if not crazy. This looks like a Dark Souls set in China in some ways. I don't know if there's enough of a game so far that I see that makes it look particularly interesting. I mean, Asian monsters, I have said, I think several times in the past, that I would like to see more games with more Asian monsters instead of your just standard vampires and werewolves and things. But yeah, this definitely feels like it's just Asian Dark Souls. Which at a certain point, why play Asian Dark Souls or play an Asian Dark Souls clone that's a Chinese company when more than likely the original creators of Dark Souls could just have made an Asian Dark Souls game, and probably will, in, if not soon after this game comes out, before. Yeah, I can't even see an argument as far as publishing it. Like, if you were saying, well, this previous version is prior art and thus it's part of my portfolio, or this previous version is not the thing you were injuncted to post. I mean, you could maybe make that argument that the interpretation of it was, this is not some part of the soundtrack because this was a earlier version of the song, and this was not contracted work, I guess, maybe. That would be nearly $1 billion lawsuit you would have to argue and fight for, is to say this version is so different from the version that was finally released and made for the game that that this version has a different and separate copyright that belongs to the creator of the game versus the creator of the music versus the final version that belongs to Bungie. Yeah, I don't think that lawsuit would succeed easily. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called 11th Stream, which is obviously just a puke of color. It's an asset flip first-person shooter, $11.99. Maybe not even an asset flip game. GameDeveloper.com says Elodie has netted $32.5 million to develop cross-platform titles, if you're interested in that. Here we have The Last Friend Prologue out now, but it's a prologue, so I don't really care. We'll wait until the actual game comes out. It's English only and free. According to Gamatsu, X Zeus, the complete collection, launches September 30th. I guess that's X Zeus 1 and 2 updated for modern platforms. Looks to me like it's some kind of mech game. Maybe flying around in a mech 3D shooter game. Doesn't look interesting. Video Game Chronicle says Yuji Naka has gone indie following the, I have to say, massive failure of Balan Wonder World. Wasn't it called Balan Wonderland in the West? But whatever. Maybe it wasn't. The Sonic programmer says he's now making a small mobile game on his own. So basically he was fired. But also, he probably was only kept at Sega because he made Sonic this long. I don't think he's really done much. And if anything, Sega's entire staff, as far as making Sonic games in particular, seem to be pretty terrible at making games. So I can't even really blame Sega for firing him. Let's just call it what it is. And I doubt too many people are going to play his small mobile game when it comes out. Yeah. But in another way, that is back to the thought. All of a sudden now, in the past few years, it feels like Japanese companies are more willing to get rid of employees instead of just keeping them on and just hiding them somewhere in an office. Let's see. Gamatsu says Sega and Atlus announced their Tokyo Game Show 2021 lineup schedule. Let's see. Vista North Star, Hatsune Miku, Lost Judgment, Mega Drive Tower Mini Zero, Phantasy Star Online 2, New Genesis, Sega Net Mahjong MJ, Sonic Colors Ultimate, Super Monkey Ball, Banana Mania, and Virtual Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown. And then Sonic Mario at the Olympic Games and the Olympic Games 22. Yeah, that's really late at this point. Shin Megami Tensei 5. And then a whole bunch of more games that they're partnering with. None of these announcements seem to be on new games, though. Let's see. The subtitle says Nipponichi Software is going to announce a new strategy RPG as part of the partners lineup. One new game, potentially, and then just a lot of hype around old games. Here we already talked about this. The new RPG being teased by Sega appears to be a mobile game. Here we have Tales of a Rabbit, the story of Willie Hop. It's probably low effort asset flip game. It's supposed to be an educational game though. $4.99, third party EULA, English, allegedly full audio. I'll put this on the follow list and see if it ever gets any reviews. I bet it doesn't. Here we have Droopy Balls Simulator, which... okay. Joke game. 99 cents English only. I think we can skip that easily. Here we have a game called The Architect's Game, which is some kind of low effort asset flip social deduction game. early access, $6.29, online PvP only, so I couldn't cover it. Here we have a game called Argos Panoptes. Panoptes. Looks interesting in the art style, but the actual game I think is just a generic platforming experience. Yeah, you seem to be controlling two things at once, which I don't think that really makes it better. If anything, it just makes it more difficult of a game to play. Honestly, I just don't think there's a game here that I don't think there's just a reason to justify this art style for that style of game. It seems disconnected. $4.24 English only. I'm gonna have to say no for that. Next we have one tag nudity and sexual content, so let's check it first. Yep. It's Nico Candy Shop, and it seems to be not a jigsaw puzzle game, but just a piece puzzle game of anime cat girls. That's what Nico means, cat in Japanese, and you just drag and drop them together. It's 79 cents with an 18 plus free DLC to decensor it, bunch of languages. It's not a terrible price if you're just looking for a cheap, probably less than 2 hour porn experience. There is a potential argument here for a game like this where you probably could burn through it in less than 2 hours, where people might refund it, and that might just generally increase the number of refunds on Steam and generally give off a perception that more games are being refunded than should be. But I imagine Valve is smart enough to look at certain games and see why they're being refunded potentially more than average before they just jump to conclusions and potentially take off the adult games that are really short if that becomes a problem, and maybe curate more. I don't want to see the adult games leave, but I also would like to see good adult games with more content. Next we have Crisis Remastered. I've never played any of the Crisis games. I think I own the old one. This one is on the following list already. It's $14.99 and third-party EULA, English full audio. I suspect now that this is out today that we will potentially in the next week see a lot of reviews pop up and a lot of YouTubers and game critics covering it. There is a definite possibility that Crisis 1 is a rough older game and it'd be fairly hard to play it like compared to like a brand new game. Let's see. Gamatsu says Limnus Gate gameplay overview trailer is now available to watch. Let's skip through this and see what this is. Yeah, even like comparing this random first-person shooter to Crisis, it seems like you're gonna have some new gimmicks and more polish happening. Nah, I don't even see anything particularly interesting around Limnus Gate, but yeah, Crisis would be a bit of a struggle to play. Here we have a game called Street Dreams, which looks too neon-y for me. It's $8.39 English only. Here we have Neon Arena, which is probably too neon-y for me also. It's a top-down asteroids game for 59 cents. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says the IGDA Women in Games Group Chair Jennifer Schur has departed following abuse allegations. So, yeah. That's not really lifting up womankind there. I don't know if this story has been talked about much, though. She was accused of emotional abuse and manipulation. Now, arguably, I think you could say there are a lot of women out there that are very good at emotional abuse and manipulation. But then you could also certainly take this without knowing. You could assume one way or the other way. You could assume that this is just accusations that are highly exaggerated or just outright false, and the chair didn't want to fight it. But yeah. Yeah, it's a weird catch-22. Women often don't seem like they want to work for other women. Men often seem to not want to work for women. And then women often complain that they aren't getting promoted and being the boss. So, yeah. What can you do, really? And the only thing I could probably say is that if you're being accused of emotional abuse and manipulation, you should just say, that's false. This is just a slanderous rumor. You should just fight it, I think. Like, unless they've got something more physical, more provable in court, something that is actually a crime, I think you fight it and stay in the job. And it may get really down to that point where, unless you are actually convicted of a crime, you should fight and keep your job. Otherwise, you're potentially getting into a scenario where people are going to just be losing their jobs left and right on the slimmest of accusations. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Cursed Night the House, which looks like it's probably just an asset flip horror game. $11.99, VR game, English only. Here we have Love Colors, Paint with Friends. Which is just a paint by number game. $2.39 with some more DLC, bringing up to closer to $7, English only. Nothing there of interest. Here we have a game called Motivational Hero, which looks like it's probably too simplistic of a game and looks like it is just a frustration platformer. $1.19, English only. They're comparing it to Regency Solitaire as far as the tags are concerned and Steam is concerned, which is a terrible comparison. Here we have a game called Extra Orb, I guess maybe is how you're supposed to pronounce it. Looks like it's skee ball in large VR environments. Actually, I'm a little surprised there aren't more skee ball clones out there. I think there is maybe an argument here to put this on the fall list. It's probably not a game worth playing. $3.74 is also a little expensive, but maybe not that expensive since it's kind of unique. This is definitely a game where if you were a better programmer, you take this idea and you quickly make a clone, another skee ball game that looks twice as good and is the same price, and you can probably win the market before too many people even hear about this game. RetroArch is finally out on Steam. It includes Mupin 64 Next as DLC, Chronos, PC SX Rearmed, Stella, and Same Boy. That's 5 of 10 of its cores. MB, GBA, Messen S, think Messin is an NES simulator. Genesis plus GX and Final Burn Neo. So there's considerably quite a few cores here that are missing, and RetroArch, LibRetro are kind of the same people. LibRetro's more the company. Like, there's really not the greatest of reasons to install this through Steam other than you just want it on your Steam storefront and Steam library. You still would have to get a bunch of ROMs. You'd still potentially have to install or build some of these cores that emulate different systems. They're really not getting deep into the possibilities that exist. There's still a decent argument towards specifically installing it separately or building a Raspberry Pi RetroPie build and having a completely separate PC that can decently enough emulate a lot of the older games. Everything pretty much before Nintendo 64 is emulated fairly fine with a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus or Raspberry Pi 4. And none of the cores there look like the cores that would emulate Nintendo 64 games or anything higher than that. There might be a weird split where all the cores that emulate Nintendo consoles in particular are not included on the Steam version, and it's just Sega Genesis and PlayStation and all the other companies' platforms. They may be afraid of being sued by Nintendo. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Balsa Model Flight Simulator, Balsa Wood Airplanes, which I don't know how many people even know about Balsa Wood airplanes. Early access 1709 English only, not interested in it. Here we have a game called Memories. Which looks a little bit asset flippy, but also looks like it has maybe some artistic merit to it. Running around in Beirut. This may be more of a political statement game than an actual game, because this just feels really weird for weirdness sake alone. Yeah, this feels like this is a vertical slice of an attempt to make a game, not an actual finished product of a game. Which is a shame, because some of this visuals might be interesting. It's early access, $4.99 English and French. I'm going to give this a follow just as an exception, just in case they actually do get out of early access and actually make a game worth playing. Next we have a game here that's just all Asian characters. Looks like it's a Chinese RPG or a Chinese mobile phone game maybe. Yeah, it looks more like a puzzle mobile phone game. $2.09 Chinese only. We have Idolmaster Hunter's Steam Edition, which is like just a boring idle game. $4.79 English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, we have a game called Plague Breaker, which looks like a Castlevania Rogue Legacy clone. Probably wouldn't want to play this, but I'll give it a chance. It is $10.79, which is fairly expensive. English, allegedly full audio. I'll give it a chance, but boy, does that feel like that's going to be a pass. Here we have a game, Honey, I Joined a Cult. which might be interesting, but I'm not sure what kind of game it really is. It kind of looks like an escapist clone. Early access, $17.99, whole bunch of languages. It is from the publisher Team 17. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to do this any more than I'd want to do Prison Simulator or anything else. Let's see, next we have Rising Spire Prelude, which is obviously just a prelude. This actually looks like a nice animation. Wasn't really expecting that. Early access free, English only. I guess we'll wait till Rising Spire itself comes out, and if it's good, I'll put it on the wish list. Here we have a game called Filcher, which I don't even know how many people know the word filching or filcher as far as stealing things. Yeah, looks like it's a low polygon, low effort game. $8.99, English only. Here we have a game called Button Mash, which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest. Free to play, English, allegedly full audio. We have Chibi Club Tower Defense, or TD, which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest. $5.59, English only. Here we have a game called Bright Lights of Svetlov, which might just be an asset flip walking simulator. That's what it says, is a walking simulator. $4.99, Russian full audio, English only. Probably would skip this, but I'm not willing to make any decisions today, obviously. Here we have a game called ZEE.End, which looks like it's just a low effort zombie game, survival game. $18.99, English only. That's too expensive. Here we have Era of Newborns, which is mostly negative already, so we can immediately reject that. 11% positive of 27 reviews. $19.99, supposed to be an MMO. Here's Metallic Child. They're calling it an action roguelike. I feel like I had heard about Metallic Child, but I don't feel like I've seen it. Hacking and slashing and fighting bosses and different perspective shifts. Alright, well, I'll put it on the fall list. We'll see how reviews fare it. $22.49, Japanese and Korean full audio. This is from Studio HG, publisher Crest. Here we have a game called United Chronicles. And I'm just trying to get through enough games that we only have a little bit left from Monday. This game looks terrible. $8.99, English only. Here we have a game called Nair, which apparently they're not familiar with the hair removal product called Nair. Yeah, pencil drawing fighting game. Doesn't look particularly interesting. $2.99, English only. We have Hanaku Honor and Blade. Hanako Honor and Blade. Mostly positive. Hack and slash game. $8.99. English full audio. I think that has to go to the wish list. Is there any reason to not put it on the wish list? No. Fairly cheap. May not be that long, but even at that price, that wouldn't be a big deal. Then we have a game called My Horizon, which looks like nothing. Let's see, early access, $8.99. Here we have Your Riding, Surfing and Bodyboarding game, which this is like weird that there's two surfing games coming out at the same time, and both of them look different. This one looks way worse though, and I don't think I'd pick either one. This is $21.24, which is way too expensive. Third-party account, English full audio. Here we have a game called Tales of Tales: The Crooked Crown, which looks like it is an actual board game. That might be interesting. Depends on how it really plays. $22.49 is fairly expensive though. English full audio. We'll leave that on the follow list. Here we have Astro Ace. Just a space shoot 'em up game of no interest. $2.33, English only. Here we have a game that's Asian characters, which looks like maybe a simplistic puzzle game. $6.99, English and Chinese full audio, allegedly. Here we have Puzzle Furries, which is just puzzle games of anime cat girls and furries. I guess furries, not cat anime girls. Yeah, no interest there. $1.19. Allegedly full audio in all of the languages it supports. Which really just, that should set off some red flags that they're mislabeling it. We have a game called Dance of Cubes, which looks uninteresting. 99 cents, English. Again, allegedly full audio. I don't think there's going to be any cubes talking to you. Here we have a game called Velvet Clouds, which looks like it's just drawn a little too bad for me to be interested in this. See, this is the kind of art style in particular that if somebody showed me a comic book of this in this art style, I'd be willing to watch it, read it. If somebody made a movie in that art style, it might be a little rough, but I'd watch it. But as a game, I just wouldn't put up with it. And then there's just an inconsistency in the art style too. Like, this is drawn a little bit different than this is. And you'd want it to be more consistent, I think. Here we have a game called The Forgotten Phobia, which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest. $5.99 English and Russian. It's part of a bundle for $61 of 55 other games. That too should be curated down, and companies shouldn't be allowed to make these giant bundles of games. We have a game called The Daunting House. There might be something here, but I don't think so. $9.99 English full audio. Probably does have some speaking lines in it, but I bet it's not that much. I am gonna definitely hate myself when I start cleaning up the follow list more and realize how many of these games I've left on the follow list that are just totally not really worth considering. We have Mary Knott's Garden Wedding, which looks like it's a hidden object game from HH Games. $5.39 English only. And then here we have one called 24, and then some Asian characters. And English is not supported. $2.39 Chinese only, easily dismissed. And yeah, that's enough to leave just a full title bar of tabs. So let me just very quickly go through my Twitter feed and see if there's any news that needs to be talked about, and then we'll just end this recording here. I see no reason to go longer. I may play off screen and try and get these, but I also could see myself just not caring, like, because yeah. honestly, if I could find a way to take a little bit more of a break between talking about news, I would, at this point, pretty much just stop playing Shadowverse. I've lost pretty much all interest in it. It's never been a game that rewards you well, and it is a very highly demanding game. The win ratio is worse than even Magic the Gathering Arena and Hearthstone. I really, really wish that the Binbrode game would just come out and I could jump over to that. Here we have another arena run, too. So I guess I should do that. They're doing the Tacticians Cup Volume 2, I guess, right now. So yeah, I'll just leave it here and let me check the Twitter feed. Yeah, I'm starting to yawn. X-Play is still ramping up, I guess, as far as game reviews, but it really doesn't feel like it's ever going to be. The new G4 is ramping up, not X-Play. They haven't brought back anything that feels like actually X-Play. But yeah, they definitely feel like they're just a YouTube channel, and that's it. It doesn't feel like there's really any new idea or any chance at all that it would be an actual TV channel or in any way on the streaming site. It would make a lot of sense potentially for them to go all out and see if they could get highlighted as a series on something like Amazon Prime or Netflix. That would be definitely my idea. If I had millions of dollars of funding, is I would actively try to negotiate the idea of, hey, we want to make a long-running series TV channel, but we don't want it to be on TV. We're not going after cable, so we want to be your exclusive on Netflix, and we'll make, say, at least 300 episodes a year. And I think Netflix would probably be interested in the small hype, particularly if you had something like G4 and X-Play there, particularly if you could get the rights or help negotiate the rights away from the old G4 content. Yeah, I would be much happier with the idea of old G4 shows on Netflix right now than a YouTube channel that calls itself G4 and is made up of a whole new group of people who seem to not really do too much. And that's the major problem, is that they just don't feel like they're doing anything worth talking about. And yeah, Attack of the Show definitely would have had a problem in that you don't have that much news that's fun to talk about happening these days. And X-Play can still definitely exist, but you have to be fairly careful about making a lot of content. Even in the old days, if X-Play had been more closer to a weekly show, it might have made a lot of sense. Let's see. Yeah, I'm just going through all my Twitter feeds and making sure there isn't any new news, and it seems like there isn't. Over this weekend, what do I need to do? I need to schedule things. I need to at some point try to work on that irrigation system some more. I've really dropped the ball there. Apparently THQ Nordic has 42 games in development, 28 of which are still to be announced. After a announcement, I guess, that just happened from THQ Nordic. A SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake has been announced for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch and PC. Is that a new game, though? Jagged Alliance 3 has been announced for PC, which would explain why Jagged Alliance 1 was free on Steam. Superpower 3 has been announced on PC. This must have just happened about an hour ago. MX and ATV Legends has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. I'm just going to read these out loud. Outcast 2: A New Beginning has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. I thought Outcast 2 was already made. Let's see. Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and that was all the THQ 10th anniversary showcase, I guess. It's kind of questionable whether it really has been 10 years with THQ, but it probably has. The SpongeBob 3D platformer is new. Yeah, and I guess that's all the news. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching,